Now that we're all set up, we can actually insert our data. So instead of console logging our rec.body, we need to do a few inserts, not just the post itself, right? Our form does not specify that we have to already have a user that exists in order to create the post. So for example, I put in the name Karen when I was creating my post, but there isn't a Karen in the database. So first thing I need to do is find or create that user data. So first thing, we want to use our try catch block. Inside of the try, I'm going to find my user data and see if it exists or not. This is going to be a database call, which means I'll use await because it is asynchronous, and I should make this entire callback an async function. So I want to send in a query to select everything from my user table where the user's name is the name that I got in my rec.body. All right, so I have my user data. If I don't have anything in my user data, then I need to create a user. So let's say if that user data rows doesn't have any length, because remember, if I don't find a user whose name corresponds to the name in my rec.body, then I'm still going to get back a response, but that response will have an empty array of data. So I can check if there isn't a length for this array, and if not, I need to create that user. So if that's the case, I want my user data to instead be an insert into my user tables, a name value, and the value I want to insert is going to come from my rec.body. And then I want to make sure I'm returning the new user that I just created. So now I either have user data coming from the initial call where that user does exist, or I have user data coming from the new user that I have just created. Either way, I have some user data. So now I want to create the post. One thing I know I'm going to need from the post is the user ID. So let's grab the user ID from my user data, the first row, .id. Remember, there should only be one row. And create some post data. So I'm going to await client.query. I'm going to insert into my posts. I have user ID, a title, and content. And the values for those are going to be $1, $2, and $3, respectively. And then I want to make sure I'm returning all of those data and passing in my values for $1, 2, and 3. So the first one is my user ID. We know that. The second is the title. So I have rec.body.title. And the third I want to have be the content. So I have rec.body.content. Now I should have the new post, and I want to redirect to that post's page. So I'll end with a res.redirect to /posts/ the ID of that post. So let's change this into a template literal. And so I have posts, and then I want my post ID, which I'd get from postdata.rows0.id. And just to make that a little easier for us, let's do the same thing we did with our user ID and create a variable for our post ID also. So post ID is going to be my user data.rows at 0.id, except it's not the user data. We want the post data. And we'll redirect to that post ID. All right, now we want to make sure that we always catch our errors. And I'm going to pass this error into next if I catch it. You, of course, are also welcome to set the status to 500 yourself and send some message saying that something went wrong, there was an error. All right, let's see if this is working properly. So I can go to Chrome and restart. This seems to be working well. Let's go to post/add. I'll create, again, Karen. We'll have some title like, I submit this. So we have a problem here. We cannot read property title of undefined. This is happening when we are redirecting to that specific post. The first thing I would check is, did I actually insert the data correctly? Do I have a post with an ID of 15? Let's open up PSQL, connect to my database, and I'm going to select all of my posts and see if I have a post with an ID of 15. So I scroll down. I do have a post with an ID of 15. So that doesn't seem to be the problem. Once I restart my server, it seems to work. So it's not a problem with my redirect either. It's just that I can't get that 15th post. This takes a little bit to debug, but it's actually coming from our join statement. Our 15th post does not have any upvotes. It is not in the upvote table. In fact, if I go to /posts, even though I know that this post is in my database, it does not come up at the bottom of my all posts page. If we go to our code here, this is because we're using an inner join. We have our posts and our users that are being joined, and then that is inner joining with our upvotes table. Remember, in an inner join, when we are lining up our post ID and counting post ID, if there isn't a counting.post ID, if this is null, then that entry will not be included on either side. That means that post whose ID equals some value that doesn't exist, it's not going to be included in the table that is sent back. So we can solve this two ways. First off, we could make sure that our new post is going to have an upvote. Or we could change this inner join to a left join. If I use left join here, that means that I do want to include posts that may not have an ID inside of my counting table that I've created with my subquery. So if I save this, let's see if that at least helps us get the proper data for our front page. If I refresh, go all the way to the bottom, I get my What's Up by Karen, and it has null upvotes, which is fine. But what I really want to do is make sure that my upvotes are never null. I'm going to start it off with 1. The user that creates the post will also upvote it automatically. Because that's the case, I'm going to keep this in inner join, but just make sure that I have data in counting, the counting subquery, or the counting table that I made in my subquery. Make sure that there is a post ID for every post. Cool, so I already have a post ID. I'm just going to insert in some additional data into upvotes. So let's say my upvote data is going to be client.query insert into upvotes in the columns user ID and post ID, the values of my user ID and post ID. If I want to use my upvote data in any way, I need to make sure I say returning star, which is just a good practice to get into, but right now there's really nothing I need to do with this upvote data. I just need to make sure it exists in the database. So now let's go back, refresh. Now, because I still have an inner join, I'm not going to get the post that I just created. But now any post that I create after this should automatically get an upvote. So we'll have this new one also be Karen. So this time we are finding a user instead of creating one. And we'll just put some gibberish for the title so we're sure to notice it. I'm going to submit, and this is great. I am redirecting in the proper way. If I go back to my all posts, then I get my number 16 with some gibberish by Karen. Now, notice we don't have a number 15 here. Unfortunately, because we changed our code later, there's no way to easily go back without just changing it directly in the database. But if I reseeded and started from here on out, everything would work splendidly. All right, and that is the conclusion of your Wizard News Part 2 and 3.